The fluorescent lights of Viridian Tech Solutions hummed with a sterile indifference, casting a pale, unwavering glow over rows of sleek, minimalist workstations. In the heart of Silicon Valley, California, Viridian was a titan, a monument to innovation and relentless progress. Yet, nestled almost ironically outside the glass-walled executive offices, stood a relic Agnes Periwinkle's desk. It was an island of beige antiquity in a sea of polished chrome and digital screens. Her desktop computer, a chunky monitor from a bygone era, displayed a spreadsheet that looked like it belonged in a museum exhibit. Agnes, too, seemed a quiet anomaly, a living testament to a time when office life was measured in the rhythmic clack of typewriter keys rather than the silent glide of a mouse. She had been at Viridian for nearly 40 years, a lifetime dedicated to the company's ebb and flow, its rises and falls. She was the institutional memory, the quiet, beating heart of an organization constantly striving to reinvent itself. But in a world obsessed with the new, with the next big thing, Agnes was largely overlooked, a piece of the furniture, indispensable in her quiet way, yet largely invisible. Her lunch, a humble, homemade tuna sandwich on whole wheat bread and a crisp gala apple, sat on a napkin beside her keyboard. The faint, persistent odor of microwave popcorn from the break room drifted past. But Agnes paid it no mind. She ate in silence, her gaze fixed on the endless stream of data she was meticulously organizing. The background hum of hushed executive meetings from behind the glass, the soft whirring of powerful servers, and the incessant, almost musical click of her own mechanical keyboard were the soundtrack to her solitary existence. Young, ambitious colleagues, fresh out of Stanford or MIT, zipped past her desk, their faces alight with the fervor of new ideas, their conversations peppered with jargon. Agnes hadn't bothered to learn. They rarely met her gaze, even more rarely offered a greeting. She was a silent, unmoving fixture, a familiar presence they walked around, not through. Her very being, her unshakable presence amidst the fleeting trends, seemed to highlight the relentless forward march that left no room for the past. Her hands, spotted with age but nimble and precise, moved with an practiced efficiency that belied her years. She was organizing old client contracts, cross-referencing paper files with digital scans, a task made agonizingly slow by the clunky, outdated software she was still required to use for legacy data. While the younger employees wrestled with cutting-edge AI and blockchain technologies, Agnes was deep in the digital archaeology, unearthing information from forgotten formats. Her posture, ramrod straight, spoke of decades spent at a desk, a quiet dedication etched into her very bones. Her sensible cardigan, perpetually buttoned, was a bastion of traditionalism in a sea of smart casual tech wear. One blustery Tuesday afternoon, as a sudden burst of rain lashed against the skyscraper windows, a junior analyst named Liam, a bright but often distracted young man, stumbled past Agnes's desk. He was a whirlwind of nervous energy, already late for an impromptu meeting with the senior VPs. In his haste, his arm swung wide, catching the edge of a styrofoam cup filled with lukewarm coffee. The lukewarm liquid cascaded down his crisp white button-down shirt, leaving an ugly, spreading stain right over his chest. Liam gasped, his eyes wide with dismay. "Oh, crap," he muttered, staring at the growing brown blotch. The meeting was in 5 minutes. There was no time to change, no time to even properly clean it. Panic flared in his eyes. He usually barely acknowledged Agnes, viewing her as an old-fashioned relic, a silent testament to the company's past. But now, in his moment of desperation, his gaze, almost by accident, fell upon her. Agnes, without a word, without even a flicker of judgment in her kind, tired eyes, simply reached into the top drawer of her desk. She pulled out a small, surprisingly well-stocked emergency kit, a miniature spray bottle, a pristine white cloth, and a tiny, almost medicinal-smelling bar of soap. She had assembled it years ago, after witnessing countless coffee spills and lunch mishaps in the fast-paced office environment. "Here," she murmured, her voice soft, almost a whisper, yet firm with unspoken competence. She didn't offer advice or commiserate. She just acted. Liam, bewildered, watched as Agnes carefully took the cloth, sprayed a delicate mist from the bottle, and began to dab, then gently rub, at the coffee stain. Her movements were precise, almost surgical. She worked with an unhurried confidence, applying pressure, then releasing, as if performing a delicate operation. She had learned this trick decades ago, from a meticulous dry cleaner who frequented the old downtown office building. It was an old-world skill, passed down through generations of practical wisdom. Gradually, almost magically, the dark brown stain began to lighten, then to fade, eventually disappearing almost completely, leaving only a faint, damp patch. "There," Agnes said, stepping back, her task complete. "It will dry quickly. You'll be fine for your meeting." She handed him the now almost clean shirt back, her hands briefly brushing his. Liam stared, first at his shirt, then at Agnes, his mouth slightly agape. He had expected, at best, a sympathetic glance. At worst, a gentle chiding for his clumsiness. He certainly hadn't expected such swift, effective, and utterly silent competence. He stammered, a flush creeping up his neck. "Oh, wow, Ms. Periwinkle. Thank you. I really appreciate that. I don't know what I would have done." He was genuinely surprised and a little embarrassed by his previous dismissiveness. It was a small act of kindness, an almost invisible moment of quiet service. But it spoke volumes about Agnes's character, her inherent helpfulness, and her unacknowledged practical wisdom. It was her save-the-cat moment, ensuring that anyone observing would immediately empathize with and root for her. Liam, usually oblivious, suddenly saw her not as an outdated fixture, but as a competent, kind human being. As the weeks turned into months, Agnes continued her quiet work, her hands moving over her keyboard with a familiar, almost soothing rhythm. But beneath the surface of her unassuming demeanor lay a mind of remarkable depth and precision. Agnes possessed an extraordinary memory, a vast internal archive of Viridian Tech Solutions' entire history. This wasn't just a memory for anecdotes or personal events. It was a photographic, almost algorithmic recall for obscure details about the company's evolution, its various technological shifts, the countless software upgrades, and, most uniquely, the forgotten intricacies of its older systems. She remembered the quirks of the original mainframe, installed in the early 1980s, a monolithic beast that still held vast amounts of legacy data. She remembered the obscure command prompts, the specific syntax required for certain operations, even the idiosyncratic habits of the programmers who had designed its initial security protocols. This was evident in her daily work. She would often, without thinking, automatically complete complex tasks that the newer, more intuitive systems couldn't handle, bridging the gap between outdated and modern technology with her sheer recall. Or, she would quietly offer a cryptic suggestion in a meeting, a solution based on something she remembered from a long-defunct software version, a problem encountered and solved decades ago. Her personal space, too, held subtle clues to this unique talent. Nestled among her official work files were several worn, leather-bound notebooks. Their pages, yellowed with age, were filled with her neat, elegant cursive, not just meeting notes, but intricate diagrams of old network configurations, flowcharts of forgotten data migration processes, and rows of what appeared to be random alphanumeric characters, meticulously recorded in neat columns. These were not casual scribbles. They were her personal archives, a backup system for the company's unwritten history. Some of these notes detailed a system of mnemonic devices she had developed over decades to recall an array of archaic passwords, server access codes, and administrative overrides, often tied to seemingly insignificant company milestones or personal events of long-departed executives. She was a human database, far more resilient than any server farm. Colleagues, if they ever happened to glance at these notebooks, would often chuckle, dismissing them as the quaint eccentricities of an old-school secretary. They saw her as charmingly out of touch, a relic from a bygone era. They didn't realize that these handwritten entries, these seemingly random jottings, were the tangible manifestations of a powerful, meticulously organized mind. They were the raw data of her unique talent, a talent honed through decades of quiet observation and diligent record-keeping, a talent that went far beyond mere secretarial duties. They were the key to Viridian's past, and, as fate would soon reveal, to its very future. The quiet before the storm was about to break, and the rhythmic clack of Agnes's keys would soon become the unexpected beat of a looming crisis. The tectonic plates of Viridian Tech Solutions began to shift with an almost audible groan in the crisp autumn of 2025. The tremors started not with an earthquake, but with an email, terse and devoid of pleasantries, announcing a new leadership. Julian Thorne, a name previously whispered only in hushed, speculative tones in the upper echelons of venture capital, was now the new CEO. His reputation preceded him a young, ruthless disruptor, a Silicon Valley wunderkind known for aggressive modernization and brutal cost-cutting, whose previous ventures had left a trail of soaring stock prices and shattered corporate cultures. He was obsessed with efficiency, with optics, with the lean, mean machine he envisioned Viridian becoming. To him, employees were numbers on a spreadsheet, assets to be optimized or liabilities to be shed. Julian's arrival was less an entrance and more an invasion. He swept through the polished corridors like a cold front, his bespoke Italian suits a stark contrast to the usual casual tech attire. His movements were sharp, precise, his gaze constantly evaluating, calculating. He replaced the comfortable, if slightly outdated, ergonomic chairs with minimalist, spine-crushing designer versions. He mandated new, overly complex software for every mundane task, citing synergy and optimization, regardless of the learning curve or genuine need. His presence alone created an atmosphere of pervasive anxiety. The vibrant hum of innovation was replaced by a tense, nervous silence. The whispers in the break rooms weren't about new breakthroughs anymore, but about who would be next on the chopping block. For Agnes, Julian Thorne's ascent was a direct, personal threat. She represented everything he disdained: the past, the traditional, the seemingly outdated. Her very presence, her rhythmic clack of an old keyboard, was a living embodiment of the inefficiency he was determined to eradicate. He saw her not as a repository of invaluable institutional knowledge, but as an antiquated cog in a machine he intended to completely overhaul. His internal monologue, unseen by anyone but the omniscient observer, frequently scoffed at the dead weight of long-term employees, particularly those who didn't fit his sleek, digital-first aesthetic. He envisioned a workforce of agile, young minds, unburdened by legacy systems or sentimental attachments to the old ways. His ultimate goal was to strip away anything that hinted at a past he considered less than optimal, even if that meant discarding decades of invaluable human experience. Agnes felt the seismic shift deep in her bones, the familiar comfort of her routine, the quiet certainty of her place within the company, began to crumble. She had dedicated nearly 40 years of her life to Viridian. It wasn't just a job, it was her anchor, her identity. The thought of being replaced by AI and digital efficiency was terrifying, a profound existential threat. Where would she go? What would she do? Her small, meticulously managed life revolved around her work, her quiet contributions. The idea of being cast aside, deemed obsolete after a lifetime of loyalty, filled her with a cold dread. But beneath the fear, a stubborn resilience began to harden. Decades of quietly navigating corporate shifts, of adapting to new technologies while retaining her core competence, had forged a deep sense of self-worth. She wasn't just a secretary, she was a survivor, a silent witness to Viridian's entire trajectory, A burning defiance began to spark within her, a fierce desire to protect her dignity, her legacy, and the quiet testament to hard work that her desk represented. This wasn't just about her. It was about the intrinsic value of experience, the wisdom accumulated over time, the human element that Julian Thorne was so eager to dismiss. She felt a nascent, protective instinct for the very soul of the company, for the unwritten history he so carelessly disregarded. The inevitable confrontation arrived sooner than expected. Julian called a company-wide town hall meeting, held in the sleek, minimalist auditorium, a space designed for grand pronouncements. The air buzzed with nervous anticipation. Employees sat rigidly in their ergonomic chairs, their faces mirroring a collective apprehension. Julian strode onto the stage, a charismatic predator in his element, his voice amplified by the state-of-the-art sound system. "Good morning, Viridian," he boomed, his voice resonating with an almost artificial optimism. "Today marks a new era, an era of innovation, of streamlined efficiency, of unparalleled growth. We are shedding the old, embracing the new, and building a company fit for the 21st century." He unveiled his Viridian Reimagined plan, a series of aggressive initiatives designed to cut costs and boost profitability. He spoke in buzzwords: synergistic integration, vertical optimization, agile transformation, each one a veiled threat to the old guard. He projected dazzling graphs and charts, depicting steep declines in overhead and meteoric rises in projected revenue. The employees shifted uncomfortably, recognizing the subtext job cuts were coming. Then, he focused his laser-like gaze on the administrative departments. "We are eliminating redundancies," he declared, his voice hardening. "The age of paper pushing and manual scheduling is over. Our new AI-driven platforms will handle all administrative tasks with unprecedented speed and accuracy. This means..." He paused, his eyes sweeping over the nervous faces. "A significant reduction in our administrative staff, particularly those roles that are less adaptable to our digital future." His words were a thinly veiled attack on Agnes and others like her. He didn't mention her by name, but his gaze, almost imperceptibly, flickered towards her desk. A silent, pointed accusation. He spoke of outdated secretaries being replaced by AI and digital efficiency, his tone dismissive, almost contemptuous. He laid out a timeline, aggressive and unforgiving, for these streamlining measures. The cold truth settled over Agnes. This was it. Her existence at Viridian, her 4-decade legacy, was being dismissed as redundant, less adaptable. The world, it seemed, had finally caught up to her, or rather, moved past her, leaving her stranded in a technological vacuum. This public declaration, this brutal dismissal of her life's work, was her point of no return. She couldn't go back to her quiet routine, pretending that nothing had changed. Her dignity had been openly challenged, her very value questioned by a man who saw only numbers, not the immeasurable depth of human experience. The fear was still there, a cold knot in her stomach, but it was now laced with a steely resolve. She would not simply fade away. She would not allow her lifetime of dedication to be erased by a dismissive wave of a CEO's hand. After the town hall, a grim silence settled over the office. Employees scattered, some whispering nervously, others already updating their resumes. Julian Thorne, however, lingered, his eyes scanning the space, already envisioning its transformation. He walked directly past Agnes's desk, not even granting her a glance, his back ramrod straight, a visible statement of his contempt for what she represented. Agnes felt a strange detachment, observing him as if from a great distance. Her heart ached, but her mind was already turning, quietly, persistently. She began to mentally sift through her internal archives, revisiting forgotten systems, obscure protocols, hidden pathways. The very next day, a series of urgent, increasingly frantic emails began to circulate among the IT department, a critical segment of Viridian's oldest client data. Specifically, long-term contracts and legacy financial records crucial for an upcoming merger audit had become inaccessible. The new state-of-the-art data migration system, designed to seamlessly transfer all information, had hit an unforeseen snag. The old mainframe, a colossal beast of outdated hardware still lurking in the basement server room, held the key, but none of the young, brilliant IT specialists, fluent in the latest coding languages and cloud architecture, could access it. The system was too archaic, its interface too arcane, its security protocols a relic of a bygone era. They tried everything: brute force attacks, code decryption, consulting dusty manuals, but the system remained a fortress. It required a specific, long-forgotten password, one that no living soul in the IT department had ever seen, nor known how to reconstruct. Julian Thorne, his face growing progressively paler with each failed attempt, summoned the head of IT, a perpetually flustered man named Mark, to his office. "What is going on, Mark?" Julian demanded, his voice dangerously low. "This data is critical. The merger depends on it. Why can't your cutting-edge team get it open?" Mark wrung his hands, beads of sweat forming on his brow. "Sir, it's the old mainframe. It's running on a proprietary OS from the early 80s. The protocols are completely obscure. And the master password, it hasn't been changed in decades. Probably. The original IT team. They all retired years ago. No one knows it." Julian slammed his fist on his glass desk. "Find it, get it open, or your job, and possibly this merger, is toast." Agnes, sitting at her desk, quietly processing a batch of ancient invoices, listened to the frantic whispers, the escalating panic in the IT department. She heard the frustrated exclamations, the tired sighs, the desperate phone calls to retired engineers who remembered nothing. She even saw Liam, his face drawn with fatigue, frantically flipping through a thick, outdated manual he'd dug out of storage. She knew the password, not because she had written it down, but because she remembered it. She had been there when it was created, a cryptic string of characters chosen by the company's eccentric, long-deceased founder, old Mr. Harrison. It wasn't a random sequence. It was a mnemonic, a riddle tied to a forgotten inside joke, a company tradition that only a handful of long-term employees, now mostly retired or passed away, would have ever known. It was the kind of human, illogical detail that no AI or digital archive would ever capture. It was locked in her mind, a secret buried deep within the seemingly outdated memory banks of Agnes Periwinkle. A strange sense of power, quiet and profound, settled over her. This was the key. This was her leverage. Her personal stake in Viridian's history, dismissed as irrelevant, was now its lifeline. Julian Thorne, the modern tyrant, had thrown her aside, confident she had nothing left to offer. But he was wrong. He had just ensured that the very past he disdained would be the only thing capable of saving his future. The stage was set for a dramatic reversal, a quiet reckoning that would reveal the true meaning of outdated. The week that followed Julian Thorne's grand pronouncements was a slow, agonizing slide into chaos for Viridian Tech Solutions, and a period of quiet, simmering defiance for Agnes. The sleek, modern facade of the company was beginning to crack under the weight of its own ambition. The streamlining initiatives, meant to boost efficiency, instead created bottlenecks and frustration. New software, rushed into deployment, was riddled with bugs. The vibrant, youthful energy Julian so craved was replaced by a palpable tension, a quiet fear that permeated every cubicle. Agnes, meanwhile, continued her work with meticulous precision, an island of calm in a sea of digital panic. She observed the unfolding crisis with a detached but keenly intelligent eye. She saw the frustrated sighs of the young IT professionals, the increasingly frantic pacing of Mark, the head of IT. She heard the snippets of hushed conversations about inaccessible data, about the critical legacy system that refused to yield its secrets. She knew, with absolute certainty, that they were talking about the old mainframe, the one whose password was etched not in their digital archives, but in the long-term memory of Agnes Periwinkle. Julian Thorne, oblivious to the quiet storm brewing beneath his feet, pushed harder. He demanded faster results, more aggressive cost-cutting. His contempt for the old ways intensified, fueled by his desperate need to prove his modernization strategy was working. He began a series of one-on-one meetings, a thinly veiled purge of the long-term employees he deemed outdated. The atmosphere in the office grew colder, more brutal. The inevitable confrontation with Agnes arrived on a gray Tuesday afternoon. Julian had called an emergency meeting regarding the data crisis. The IT team, exhausted and demoralized, presented their latest failures to a visibly infuriated Julian. The data, the old contracts, the financial records, still locked away. "This is unacceptable," Julian barked, slamming his fist on the polished conference table. "We are losing millions with every hour this data remains inaccessible. We need this information for the merger audit next week. What is the problem? Why can't you simply hack it?" Mark, pale and sweating, stammered, "Sir, it's not a simple hack. It's a proprietary 80s operating system. Its security isn't like modern systems. It relies on physical access controls, obscure command lines, and a master password that nobody alive here knows. We've tried every decryption algorithm, every brute force method. It's like trying to open a safe that's been buried for 40 years without the combination." Julian ran a hand through his perfectly styled hair, his face contorted in a sneer. "This is precisely why we need to move away from these antiquated systems. Dead weight. We need speed, agility, forward-thinking solutions, not some relic from the dinosaur age." His gaze swept across the room, full of disdain for the struggling IT team. In the back of the room, near the espresso machine, stood Liam. He had been working tirelessly, trying every trick he knew, every modern coding solution, to breach the mainframe. He was at his wits' end. As Julian railed against the outdated technology, Liam's gaze, by chance, fell upon Agnes, who was quietly taking notes at her desk just outside the conference room. He remembered the coffee stain, the almost magical way she had made it disappear. He remembered her quiet efficiency, her seemingly endless knowledge of obscure office protocols. And then, a desperate, almost ridiculous thought flickered in his mind. He cleared his throat nervously. "Excuse me, Mr. Thorne," Liam said, his voice hesitant. I know this might sound a little unconventional, but Ms. Periwinkle, she's been here since the mainframe was installed, hasn't she? Maybe she remembers something, some obscure command, a workaround." He felt foolish even suggesting it, given Julian's open contempt for Agnes. Julian Thorne's head snapped around, his eyes blazing with fury. "Are you serious, Liam? You're suggesting we consult a secretary about a mainframe issue? This is a highly complex IT problem, not a memo needing a stamp. This is precisely the kind of outdated thinking I'm here to eliminate." He let out a harsh, dismissive laugh, joined by a few nervous chuckles from other senior executives. But Liam, emboldened by desperation and a lingering sense of gratitude towards Agnes, pressed on. "She just knows things, sir. Obscure things. From way back. She's got an incredible memory for historical company data." Julian scoffed, a look of utter disdain on his face. "A remarkable memory for filing cabinets. Perhaps this is a digital crisis. Liam, not a trip down memory lane. Don't waste my time with this absurdity." Yet, his gaze, sharp and analytical even in his fury, flickered towards Agnes. He saw her sitting there, quietly observing, her pen poised over her notepad. He saw the subtle calm about her, a stark contrast to the panic in the room. He didn't believe for a second that she could actually help, but the sheer desperate impasse they were facing gnawed at him. He needed a solution. Any solution. "Fine," Julian snapped, his voice dripping with condescension. "Call her in. Liam, Let's humor the historical expert. But if this is another waste of time, I assure you, there will be consequences for everyone involved. Agnes entered the conference room, her movements slow but deliberate, carrying her worn notebook. The silence was thick with tension. She felt the hostile glare of Julian Thorne, the nervous glances of the IT team, the curious stares of the executives. She knew this was her moment, forced upon her, a public unveiling of a hidden talent. She did not seek the spotlight, but it had found her. "Ms. Periwinkle," Julian began, his voice dripping with barely concealed scorn. "Mr. Liam here believes you might possess some unique insight into our current mainframe crisis. Something about historical memory." He rolled his eyes, making it clear how ridiculous he found the notion. Agnes ignored his tone. Her gaze settled on the projected image of the mainframe's stubborn login screen, a relic of monochrome green text on a black background. "The mainframe," she began, her voice calm and clear, cutting through the tense atmosphere, "was installed in 1985. The original master password, Phoenix Rising $85, was set by Mr. Harrison himself." A ripple went through the room. Mark, the head of IT, looked stunned. Liam gasped softly. Julian Thorne scoffed loudly. "Phoenix Rising $85. That's a ridiculous password. Any idiot could guess that it would have been changed 100 times since then. It was never changed." "Mr. Thorne," Agnes corrected gently, her gaze unwavering. "Mr. Harrison believed that security through obscurity was strongest. He said if you made it too obvious, people would try to hack it. If you made it obscure and tied it to a personal, forgotten memory, it would be untouchable. He often spoke of Phoenix Rising. It was the original code name for this company, before he named it Viridian. He was very sentimental about it." She paused, a faint, almost wistful smile touching her lips. And the "da" was his personal touch. He said it was because money makes the world go round, even in cyberspace. Mark, the IT head, stared, his jaw slack. "Security through obscurity. I've read about that in ancient tech history. It was a philosophy. But to actually find one in the wild, still active," Julian, despite himself, felt a flicker of unease. He watched Agnes, who seemed to materialize knowledge from thin air. He quickly regained his arrogant composure. "Even if that's the original password, Ms. Periwinkle, it's irrelevant. Our new system should have seamlessly migrated all data. The problem is with the data transfer, not access. The data transfer failed for one specific reason." "Mr. Thorne," Agnes continued, undeterred, her memory like a living archive. "The old mainframe has a hidden subdirectory, Project Chimera Files. It contains highly sensitive experimental data from the late 90s, encrypted with a proprietary algorithm developed in-house. A legacy system within a legacy system. Mr. Harrison never wanted it transferred. He believed it was too unstable, too risky for public knowledge. The new system, seeing an anomalous, encrypted subdirectory it couldn't decipher, simply isolated it, believing it to be corrupted. It didn't transfer it. It quarantined it. To access it, you need a specific bypass code. Delta Sierra 99 Omega. And then, a manual command string, access Chimera, bypass SecOld." The room was silent. Mark's eyes widened, then filled with a mixture of disbelief and dawning comprehension. Liam stared at Agnes, his face a mixture of shock and profound admiration. This wasn't just memory. This was an encyclopedia of Viridian's entire technological and corporate past, delivered with quiet, unblinking authority. Agnes wasn't just remembering, she was revealing. Julian Thorne, however, was not impressed. Or rather, he was profoundly disturbed. He felt a chilling sense of unease, a sliver of fear. This old woman, this outdated relic he was so eager to discard, held the keys to his kingdom, She was a living, breathing security loophole, a potential liability to his carefully constructed image of cutting-edge modernity. Her unexpected usefulness was a threat to his narrative of progress, a testament to the very past he wished to erase. "Remarkable. Ms. Periwinkle," Julian said, his voice cold, devoid of any genuine gratitude. He forced a strained smile. "A truly fascinating display of historical recall. However, your services, while briefly interesting, are ultimately irrelevant to Viridian's digital future. As I announced, we are moving forward. Your role, unfortunately, does not align with our new vision." He turned to the head of HR, a nervous woman named Brenda, who looked away, uncomfortable. "Brenda, please ensure Ms. Periwinkle's severance package is processed immediately. Her last day will be tomorrow. We appreciate her many years of service, but we are moving on, effective immediately. She is no longer an employee of Viridian Tech Solutions." The words hung in the air. A cruel, immediate dismissal. Liam gasped. A silent protest. Mark looked horrified. Julian, having just witnessed Agnes's undeniable talent, chose to discard her, not because she was useless, but precisely because she had proven herself indispensable. It was an act of extreme arrogance, a desperate attempt to assert his power, to cut off the past and solidify his control. He needed to prove that nothing she knew was truly irreplaceable, especially not by the technology he so glorified. He wanted to wipe the slate clean, to erase the very history that Agnes embodied. Agnes felt a deep ache in her chest, a profound sense of injustice. 40 years. 40 years of loyalty, of quiet dedication, dismissed with a wave of a hand. She looked at Julian Thorne, his face a mask of cold satisfaction. She saw his arrogance, his fear, his desperate need for control. She had revealed her light, and he had responded by extinguishing it. She stood, gathering her notes, her movements slow, deliberate, dignified. She looked at Liam, who met her gaze with a look of profound regret and helpless sympathy. She saw the shock in Mark's eyes, the quiet outrage of some of the younger IT staff. "Very well, Mr. Thorne," Agnes said, her voice soft but clear, devoid of anger, only a quiet dignity. "I understand. I wish Viridian good luck with its digital future." She turned and walked out of the conference room, leaving behind a stunned silence and the echo of her quiet, rhythmic footsteps. She was no longer just a secretary. She was a woman dismissed, discarded, but with a knowledge that still held the company's fate in its hidden depths. And soon, the digital future Julian Thorne so blindly championed would prove to be far more fragile than he ever imagined. The real gauntlet was about to begin, and Agnes held the only key. Agnes Periwinkle walked out of Viridian Tech Solutions for the last time with a small box of personal effects, the rhythmic click of her sensible heels echoing in the cavernous, newly silent lobby. The usually bustling space, filled with the energy of ambitious young professionals, felt cold and hollow. Her 4 decades of dedicated service, her quiet contributions, had been dismissed with a terse word and a severance package. The sense of betrayal was a bitter taste in her mouth, a sharp contrast to the familiar comfort of her routine. She was unmoored, cast adrift from the only professional world she had ever known, deemed outdated by a man who valued youth and fleeting trends over experience and quiet competence. Julian Thorne, meanwhile, reveled in his perceived victory. He had asserted his authority, swiftly cutting ties with the past he found so distasteful. He was confident. He believed the mainframe issue, a temporary blip, would be resolved by his brilliant IT team. He spent his days in high-level meetings, projecting an image of unshakable leadership, completely unaware of the silent, escalating crisis brewing beneath the polished surface of Viridian Tech Solutions. He was the confident general marching his army forward, oblivious to the saboteur who had already rendered his supply lines useless. The digital future Julian so aggressively championed began to unravel with terrifying speed. The old mainframe, scorned as a relic, held the keys to Viridian's entire historical financial data, crucial client contracts stretching back decades, and intellectual property that formed the very foundation of the company's current innovations. Without access to this data, the upcoming merger audit was jeopardized, critical product launches were delayed, and, most damningly, the company faced significant legal and financial penalties for non-compliance. The confident hum of Viridian's progress slowly descended into a frantic buzz of panic. The IT department, led by a perpetually stressed Mark, became a scene of organized chaos. Young, brilliant programmers, fluent in Python and JavaScript, found themselves utterly bewildered by the archaic operating system of the mainframe. They tried every modern decryption tool, every bypass protocol, every online forum, but the system remained stubbornly locked, a digital fortress impenetrable by contemporary means. The password Agnes had quietly offered, Phoenix Rising $85, seemed ludicrously simple, yet no one could confirm its authenticity or even attempt to input it without risking a system wipe. They were afraid to touch it, afraid to break what they didn't understand. And without Agnes, the context, the meaning behind such a peculiar password, was lost to them. The company's main office, once a symbol of cutting-edge innovation, transformed into a symbolic gauntlet. It became a frantic arena where the limits of modern technology were brutally exposed by the stubborn resilience of the past. Julian Thorne's gleaming, minimalist headquarters now echoed with the frantic shouts of IT professionals, the desperate calls to consultants, and the increasingly grim pronouncements from financial and legal departments. The air was thick with the scent of burnt coffee and simmering despair. Agnes, isolated in her small, quiet apartment on the outskirts of Seattle, felt the tremors of Viridian's crisis from afar. She read the subtle hints in the online business news, vague reports of technical difficulties at Viridian, delays in the anticipated merger. She knew exactly what was happening. She pictured the frantic faces of the IT team, the growing panic in Julian's eyes. A part of her, the loyal Agnes who had devoted her life to the company, felt a pang of sympathy. Another part, the Agnes who had been publicly humiliated and unjustly discarded, felt a quiet, almost cold satisfaction. Her solitude was profound. She spent her days walking through local parks, feeding squirrels, or sitting in her armchair, crocheting blankets for the local animal shelter. She had been so entwined with Viridian, so defined by her role, that her dismissal had left a gaping void. She wrestled with a profound internal conflict, the desire to reclaim her dignity, to prove her worth, versus the fear of stepping back into a world that had so carelessly cast her aside. She longed to feel useful again, to put her extraordinary mind to work. Yet, the sting of betrayal, of being deemed outdated, made her hesitate. The emotional toll of being discarded was immense, far heavier than any financial loss. Her only lifeline to Viridian was Liam. He called her discreetly, his voice strained with exhaustion and desperation. "Ms. Periwinkle," he pleaded one evening, his voice barely a whisper. "It's a disaster here. The mainframe. We can't get in. We've tried everything. The merger is on the verge of collapsing. Millions, maybe billions, are at stake. Mr. Thorne he's losing it." Liam was Agnes's sole helper, and he was now her only window into the escalating crisis. He was genuinely distraught, not just for the company, but for the looming disaster and the stress it was inflicting on everyone. He respected Agnes, seeing beyond Julian's condescending dismissal. "Did you try Phoenix Rising $85?" Agnes asked, her voice calm. "We did, Miss Periwinkle. It didn't work." Liam sounded on the verge of tears. "The system says invalid password every time. We even checked the system logs. Nothing. It's like it's not even accepting it." Agnes frowned. "It wouldn't, not directly. Mr. Harrison coded it to be subtle. A layered approach." The first entry isn't the password, it's a prompt. You need to activate the legacy bypass protocol first. It's a series of non-standard keystrokes, almost like a secret handshake. It dates back to a security flaw they patched in '88, but Mr. Harrison kept it as a backdoor for emergencies. Then, and only then, does the Phoenix Rising 85 Lars password work. She explained the intricate sequence of key presses Alt-Shift-F9, followed by a specific numerical code representing the current year of the mainframe's operation. Then a short pause, and finally, the word Viridian typed backwards. Then a specific sound cue from the mainframe. It was a labyrinthine process, deliberately designed to be unforgettable only to those who knew its context. Liam scribbled frantically. "This is incredible, Ms. Periwinkle. But even if this works, we need you. No one here understands this system. It's not just about the password. It's about navigating the old DOS commands, the proprietary scripts, the original database structure. It's a completely different language." Agnes knew he was right. Her talent wasn't just memory. It was fluency in an extinct technological language. The knowledge was hers alone. She was the sole guardian of Viridian's digital past. The pressure mounted. Julian Thorne, desperate and increasingly frantic, was now facing daily calls from the board of directors, from furious merger partners, from regulatory bodies. The public whispers about Viridian's technical difficulties were escalating into full-blown media reports about a company on the brink of collapse. They were losing market confidence, investor trust, and billions of dollars with each passing hour. The looming merger audit, scheduled for just 3 days away, was a terrifying, immovable deadline. If they couldn't present the historical financial data, the deal would collapse, leading to catastrophic losses, lawsuits, and a humiliating public downfall for Julian. He was no longer just arrogant, he was desperate, his cold exterior cracking under the immense pressure. Liam, defying Julian's explicit orders to cut all contact with Agnes, called her repeatedly. "Please, Ms. Periwinkle. It's absolute pandemonium here, Mr. Thorne. He's threatening everyone. He's trying to get hackers, but no one can touch it without risking total data corruption. You're the only one. You're our last hope." Agnes listened to his pleas, the frantic urgency in his voice. She thought of Viridian, the company she had helped build, the quiet community she had been a part of for so long. She thought of the innocent employees who would suffer if Julian's incompetence led to the company's demise. Her heart ached for Liam, for the genuine distress in his voice. She was torn between the profound sense of personal injustice and the ingrained sense of duty that had defined her entire life. She wanted to prove Julian wrong, to vindicate herself, but she also felt a deep, almost maternal protectiveness for the company's legacy, for the countless jobs that depended on its survival. The ultimate test loomed. She was the sole, indispensable key to the company's salvation, yet she had been cruelly cast aside. The stage was set for a dramatic reversal of fortunes, a confrontation that would not only save Viridian, but would also, finally, force Julian Thorne to confront the true meaning of outdated. She knew the risk. If she failed, if she allowed herself to be dismissed again, it would crush her spirit completely. But if she succeeded, she would not only save the company, but also assert the invaluable, irreplaceable power of human experience over fleeting technological fads. The silent, unassuming secretary, dismissed as a relic, was about to become the unexpected savior of a tech giant. And the clock was ticking. The air in Viridian Tech Solutions' executive suite was thick with the scent of stale coffee and desperation. Outside, the morning light of a crisp Silicon Valley day seemed almost cruel in its brightness, mocking the gloom within. The massive panoramic windows that usually offered a breathtaking view of the tech landscape now felt like a spotlight, illuminating the company's impending downfall. The merger audit was hours away, and the mainframe, that stubborn, monolithic relic, remained a digital tomb, holding the crucial data hostage, Julian Thorne, his impeccably tailored suit now slightly rumpled, paced like a caged tiger, his face pale and drawn, his usually sharp eyes clouded with a frantic despair. His arrogance, once a impenetrable shield, had completely shattered. The board of directors, a collection of grim-faced, powerful individuals, sat around the conference table, their silence a heavy judgment. Their murmurs weren't about quarterly reports anymore, but about legal liabilities, plummeting stock prices, and the catastrophic failure of Julian's modernization strategy. Mark, the head of IT, looked like he hadn't slept in days, his eyes bloodshot, his shoulders slumped in defeat. All their cutting-edge technology, all their brilliant young minds, had been rendered useless by a system almost as old as some of them. This is it. Julian. The chairman of the board, a stern woman named Eleanor Vance, no relation to the detective, stated, her voice devoid of emotion. If we don't have that data by noon, the merger is off. We face billions in penalties, shareholder lawsuits, and a complete collapse of market confidence. Your position, effective immediately, will be terminated. Her words were cold, final. Julian, his entire empire crumbling around him, swallowed hard. His gaze fell upon Liam, who stood rigidly by the door, a silent witness to the unfolding disaster. Julian despised asking for help, especially from those he deemed inferior, but desperation was a powerful motivator. He remembered Liam's absurd suggestion weeks ago, the one he had so vehemently dismissed. He remembered the old secretary, Agnes, and her quiet, uncanny knowledge. His pride battled with his professional suicide. Pride lost. Liam, Julian croaked, his voice raw, hoarse. Call Ms. Periwinkle. Beg her. Offer her anything. We need her. Now. The admission was agonizing, a forced confession of his own profound folly. Liam, though exhausted, felt a surge of grim satisfaction. He pulled out his phone, his fingers trembling slightly as he dialed Agnes's number. It rang once, twice. Then, a calm, familiar voice answered. Ms. Periwinkle, it's Liam. Please, you have to come. We're done for. The mainframe. We can't. Agnes's voice, surprisingly serene, interrupted him. I know, Liam, I'm on my way. A collective gasp went through the room. Julian looked up, a flicker of bewildered hope in his eyes. He hadn't dared to believe she would even answer, let alone come. Just 15 minutes later, the executive suite's polished doors hissed open, and Agnes Periwinkle entered. She wore a simple, dignified dark blue dress, a stark contrast to the power suits of the board members and the disheveled despair of the IT team. She carried no documents, no laptop, only her worn leather-bound notebook tucked under her arm. Her presence was a quiet, almost ethereal calm amidst the storm. She was no longer just a dismissed secretary. She was the reluctant savior, the keeper of forgotten knowledge, the living key to their entire future. The very place where she had been dismissed as outdated now awaited her as its only hope. Julian, humiliation burning in his eyes, forced himself to speak. Ms. Periwinkle, he stammered. Thank you for coming. We are in a desperate situation. We need your help. The mainframe. The password. Anything you can do. His tone was meek, stripped of all its former arrogance. Agnes simply nodded, her gaze sweeping over the frantic faces in the room. She felt their desperation, their fear. She felt the lingering sting of Julian's dismissal, but also a profound sense of purpose. This wasn't about vengeance. It was about the company she had dedicated her life to, about the knowledge she had painstakingly accumulated, and about proving the invaluable worth of experience in a world too obsessed with the fleeting new. The mainframe is not merely a machine. Mr. Thorne, Agnes began, her voice soft but clear, cutting through the tense silence. It is a record, not just of data, but of Viridian's history. Its password is a story, encrypted. She walked over to the ancient terminal, set up on a temporary table, its monochrome screen glowing with the stubborn login prompt. Mark and his team watched her, breathless. "The first key," Agnes explained, her fingers hovering over the keyboard, "is not a password, but an invitation. A forgotten handshake with a system designed by dreamers." She performed the complex series of keystrokes Liam had noted down. Her movements precise and deliberate, Alt-Shift F9, a brief numerical code. Then Nidirev Viridian backwards, typed with a fluid rhythm. Each key clacked with a sharp resonant sound in the hushed room. The screen flickered. The login prompt changed to Legacy Access Initiated. A collective gasp went through the room. Mark stared, his jaw dropped. Julian watched, mesmerized. Then, the password. Agnes continued, her voice narrating each step, each layer of the forgotten code. Phoenix Rising $85. It was chosen by Mr. Harrison to mark the company's triumph over its first major financial crisis in 1985. He called it our Phoenix moment, rising from the ashes. It's a testament to resilience. She typed the characters, her fingers moving with a familiar, almost poetic grace over the worn keys. She paused, her finger poised over the enter key. The entire room held its breath. Julian's face was a study in profound anxiety, his eyes fixed on the screen. The board members leaned forward, their expressions a mixture of desperate hope and incredulous anticipation. Liam clenched his fists, silently rooting for her. This was the precipice, the moment where everything could be lost or saved. Agnes pressed enter for a long, agonizing second. Nothing happened. The screen remained dark. The Legacy Access Initiated prompt seemed to mock them. A wave of collective despair washed over the room. Mark let out a faint whimper. Julian's face crumpled, the last flicker of hope dying in his eyes. It seemed, for a moment, that even Agnes's legendary memory had failed them. Everything was lost. Then, with a faint, almost delicate electronic beep, a new line of green text appeared on the screen. Access granted. Welcome, Administrator. The screen exploded with a cascade of green data, lines of code and file names scrolling rapidly, displaying the vast, previously inaccessible archives. The old mainframe, awakened by its true master, hummed to life, pouring forth decades of forgotten information. A collective roar erupted in the room, not a shout, but a primal burst of relief and awe. Mark, the head of IT, actually sagged against the table, tears of exhaustion and profound relief welling in his eyes. Liam let out a whoop of triumph, his face splitting into a wide, joyous grin. The board members, usually so composed, exchanged stunned, then jubilant glances, some even offering spontaneous applause. They stared at Agnes, their faces transforming from skepticism to astonishment, and finally, to unadulterated admiration. Julian Thorne, however, remained rooted to the spot. His face, initially pale with despair, now flushed a deep, mortified red. He looked at the screen, at the torrent of data, then back at Agnes, who stood quietly beside the ancient terminal, her hands clasped in front of her. His arrogance, his dismissal, his entire worldview had been utterly, spectacularly shattered. The woman he had deemed outdated, the relic he had so carelessly discarded, had just single-handedly saved his company from ruin, exposing his own short-sightedness and hubris in the most public and undeniable way possible. He had wanted to erase the past, and the past had just reached out and saved his future. Agnes had not only retrieved the data, she had, in that single, triumphant moment, vindicated herself. She had proven that true value lay not in fleeting trends or superficial efficiency, but in deep knowledge, in human experience, in the unquantifiable power of memory and wisdom. The silence of her long service had finally found its voice, and it was a roar that reverberated through the very core of Viridian Tech Solutions. The reverberations from the mainframe crisis and Julian Thorne's spectacular public humiliation echoed throughout the gleaming corridors of Viridian Tech Solutions and far beyond its glass walls. News of the company's near-catastrophic data loss, followed by its improbable rescue by an elderly secretary previously deemed outdated, spread like wildfire through the tech world. The story, a potent blend of corporate hubris, generational prejudice, and quiet heroism, became an instant cautionary tale for the digital age. Splashed across the front pages of business journals and featured prominently on major news outlets. It was a stark reminder that in the relentless pursuit of the new, the invaluable wisdom of the past could be dangerously overlooked. Julian Thorne, his meticulously crafted reputation utterly in tatters, was unanimously stripped of his CEO title by an emergency session of the board of directors. His aggressive modernization strategy, once hailed as visionary, was now seen as reckless and dangerously incompetent. He left Viridian Tech Solutions not with the usual golden parachute afforded to departing executives, but with a public reprimand, a cascade of scathing media critiques, and the crushing burden of a spectacularly failed tenure. His ruthless ambition and myopic focus on efficiency at the expense of invaluable human experience had led the company to the very brink of financial ruin and widespread public embarrassment. He lost all his power, his carefully cultivated image of a tech disruptor, and the respect of his peers. The Type A villain, consumed by his own arrogance and greed, had received a fitting public downfall, a direct and undeniable consequence of his hubris and short-sightedness. He vanished from the bustling Silicon Valley scene as quickly as he had appeared, becoming little more than a cautionary whisper in the annals of corporate missteps. A ghost of a CEO whose legacy was defined by what he almost destroyed. In the immediate aftermath of this upheaval, the board, under the stern but eminently fair guidance of Chairwoman Eleanor Vance, moved to rectify their grievous error. They issued a public apology to Agnes Periwinkle, a rare and deeply significant gesture in the cutthroat world of corporate America. The apology, meticulously drafted and widely distributed, unequivocally acknowledged their profound misjudgment, expressed deep regret for her unfair dismissal, and effusively praised Agnes's invaluable, indeed indispensable, contribution to the company's survival. It was a formal, institutional validation of her worth, a long overdue public recognition of her quiet, decades-long dedication, and a powerful statement about the true value of experience. Within days, Agnes was formally invited back to Viridian. The invitation, extended personally by Chairwoman Vance in a private, deeply deferential meeting, was not a plea for a returning secretary, but an offer of a new, purpose-built role, head of corporate heritage and system recovery. It was a title that conveyed profound respect, significant authority, and an explicit recognition of her unique skill set. Her newly established department would be responsible for safeguarding Viridian's vast historical data, meticulously maintaining legacy systems, and developing robust new protocols to prevent future data crises. More profoundly, she was tasked with bridging the generational gap within the company, fostering an environment where the wisdom of the past seamlessly informed the innovations of the future. This was not merely a job, it was a profound opportunity to define a new organizational philosophy, to imbue the company with the values it had almost lost, and to ensure that no invaluable knowledge, no matter how old, would ever again be deemed outdated. She was to be the living bridge between Viridian's past and its future. The shift in atmosphere at Viridian was palpable, almost immediate. The tense, fearful silence that Julian Thorne had cultivated, the air of cutthroat competition, dissipated, replaced by a cautious optimism and a newfound sense of collaborative community. The younger employees, chastened by the near disaster and profoundly impressed by Agnes's quiet triumph, now looked at her with a mixture of genuine awe and deep respect. The rhythmic click of her mechanical keyboard, once a symbol of her isolation and perceived obsolescence, now seemed to beat a comforting, steady rhythm, a reassuring pulse at the very heart of the revitalized office. It was a sound that reminded everyone of resilience, of hidden strength, of wisdom in simplicity. One quiet afternoon, a few weeks into her new, immensely fulfilling role, Agnes found herself in her new, significantly larger office. It was less austere than Julian's former executive space, designed for quiet contemplation rather than aggressive power plays, but still commanded a sense of importance. Her old, familiar desk and chair, salvaged from her previous spot and meticulously polished, sat comfortably amidst newer, more ergonomic furniture and gleaming state-of-the-art monitors. She was overseeing the meticulous transfer of Viridian's vast legacy data onto secure, modern archives, a process she meticulously designed to ensure that no piece of the company's rich history would ever again be at risk. The air hummed with the quiet efficiency of profound purpose, a far cry from the frantic buzz of panic that had gripped the company just weeks before. Liam, now deservedly promoted to senior systems analyst and working closely under Agnes's guidance, entered with 2 steaming mugs of her favorite Earl Grey tea. He found her, as usual, meticulously reviewing a complex data migration plan, her brow furrowed in concentration. His admiration for her, once born of desperation, had only deepened into a profound, almost filial respect. "Ms. Periwinkle," Liam began, his voice soft, a hint of reverence in it. "The new data integrity protocols are nearly complete. We've also started the Legacy Bridges program, a formalized mentorship system to pair newer employees with long-term staff, like yourself, to ensure the seamless transfer of institutional wisdom and historical context." He smiled, a genuine, warm expression. It was Chairwoman Vance's idea, heavily influenced by your recent demonstration of invaluable knowledge. Agnes took a slow, appreciative sip of her tea, a faint, contented smile touching her lips. "That is good, Liam. Knowledge, like history, has a way of repeating itself if not properly preserved and understood. This program will be vital for Viridian's long-term health." She looked at him, her eyes reflecting decades of accumulated wisdom and a newfound serenity. "You showed courage, Liam. You were willing to ask for help, to look beyond what was immediately obvious, even when it was unpopular. That is a rare quality, one that will serve you well." Liam sat opposite her, gazing out at the bustling, re-energized office floor. The tension had lifted, replaced by a sense of shared purpose. I knew you knew, Ms. Periwinkle. I always felt there was more to your quiet way. And I learned a hard lesson, didn't I? About dismissing what you don't immediately understand, about underestimating the quiet ones. He paused, a contemplative look on his face. "It's funny, isn't it, Mr. Thorne wanted to get rid of everything outdated, and it was the most outdated thing. Your memory, your knowledge, that ultimately saved us." Agnes nodded, her gaze distant, reflecting on the turbulent journey that had led her to this unexpected triumph. "Indeed, Liam, in our rush for the next big thing, for innovation and cutting-edge solutions, we often forget the foundations, the mainframe, the old procedures, the human memory, the unwritten rules of corporate culture. They were not hindrances. They were anchors. They represented the wisdom of continuity, the resilience built over time, the deep roots that sustained us. Technology changes, sometimes with dizzying speed, but the core principles of good management, of respect for knowledge, and of valuing every member of the team, regardless of age or apparent trendiness, those remain timeless. So, what's it like now, Ms. Periwinkle?" Liam asked, genuinely curious, wanting to understand the emotional landscape of her unique experience. "Coming back here to the place that fired you so unjustly." Agnes looked around her new office, at the sunlight streaming through the windows, at the bustling, happy hum of the revitalized company, then back at Liam, her eyes soft and filled with a quiet, profound contentment. "It's different, Liam. The air is clearer, the fear is gone, and there is a profound sense of purpose that goes beyond just my own work. I am no longer simply archiving the past. I am actively building bridges to the future. I am helping to ensure that what happened to me, what almost happened to Viridian, never happens again. And that, she said, her voice filled with a quiet, resonant triumph, is a very good feeling indeed. She had found her new calm, not in isolated solitude, but in a profound, meaningful contribution, in the undeniable recognition of her true worth, and in the quiet satisfaction of proving that wisdom and experience were timeless, irreplaceable assets. Viridian Tech Solutions had rediscovered its soul, and Agnes Periwinkle, the once overlooked secretary, was its wise and steady guiding light. 2 years later, the heartfelt Haven Animal Shelter was no longer just a local sanctuary in suburban Seattle. It had truly become a national model for ethical animal welfare. Its reputation, once tied to a quiet, devoted staff, now soared on the wings of Dr. Ilara Vance's visionary leadership and her revolutionary approach to animal care and protection. The initial $5 million pledge from Eleanor Caldwell, now long gone and replaced by genuine, transparent fundraising, had been channeled into a truly state-of-the-art facility. The new wing, originally designed for rapid turnover, had been completely reimagined and transformed into specialized rehabilitation suites, offering advanced veterinary care, expansive behavioral therapy rooms, and tranquil sensory gardens meticulously designed to soothe even the most traumatized animals. The building hummed not just with the sound of machinery, but with a palpable sense of positive energy, a vibrant contrast to the sterile quiet that once dominated its halls. Ilara, now firmly established as a respected and influential leader in the animal advocacy community, was no longer a shadow in the background. Her presence was understated yet powerfully resonant. She commanded respect not with a booming voice or aggressive tactics, but with her quiet competence, her unwavering integrity, and her profound, almost mystical understanding of the creatures she championed. She frequently delivered keynote speeches at national animal welfare conferences, her insights into animal psychology and trauma rehabilitation transforming conventional approaches across the country. She was often invited to consult with other shelters and rescue organizations nationwide, sharing heartfelt Haven's groundbreaking protocols for ethical adoption and comprehensive intake procedures. She was the face of a new movement, a testament to the power of quiet conviction and unwavering compassion. Her office, now adorned with vibrant, impressionistic paintings of animals and bathed in natural light from expansive windows, reflected her inner peace and the broader, brighter spirit of the shelter. The original framed photo of David Miller, whose tragic sacrifice had inadvertently set her on this extraordinary path, remained a cherished centerpiece on her desk, a silent guardian of the truth, a constant reminder of the quiet detective who had championed another silent truth-teller. It served as both an anchor and an inspiration. Izzy Garcia, now the undisputed Chief Operations Officer of Heartfelt Haven, was a true force of nature. Her youthful enthusiasm, initially a spark that had first recognized Ilara's true genius, had blossomed into formidable organizational and strategic skills. She managed the shelter's sprawling operations with effortless grace and unparalleled efficiency, juggling complex budgets, meticulously overseeing staff training programs, and coordinating vast outreach initiatives. She was the perfect complement to Ilara's visionary leadership, seamlessly translating Ilara's intuitive insights into tangible, efficient, and deeply impactful programs that reached countless animals and humans. One crisp autumn morning, Ilara and Izzy reviewed the latest statistics, their faces alight with shared triumph. "Our adoption success rate is at an all-time high, Chief," Izzy announced, her eyes sparkling with genuine joy. "And our return rate is practically negligible. The new pre-adoption counseling program, combined with our extended foster care and post-adoption support, is working wonders. People are genuinely ready for these animals, and the animals are genuinely ready for their homes. That's because we're focusing on matching the right animal with the right human, not just moving numbers," Ilara replied, a rare, profound smile on her face. "And because we're healing them first, giving them time, giving them trust. That's the real work, isn't it?" Their conversation flowed easily, touching on expansion plans for satellite adoption centers, a new mobile veterinary unit they were launching to serve underserved rural communities, and the upcoming Heartfelt Heroes Gala, a genuine celebration of animal resilience and human compassion. This gala, unlike Eleanor Caldwell's cynical charade, would be a true testament to the shelter's values. Utterly devoid of superficiality and focused entirely on the stories of the animals and the people who saved them. But Alara's dedication extended far beyond the operational success of Heartfelt Haven. The lingering pain from her own past, the mysterious disappearances of Snowball and Rusty, had not faded with time. Instead, it had transmuted into a powerful, unshakable drive to ensure no other animals suffered in silence. She had, with no advances, invaluable assistance and investigative prowess, established the Silent Voices Investigative Fund. This groundbreaking national fund was dedicated to uncovering and prosecuting cases of systematic animal abuse, particularly those hidden behind facades of legitimate organizations, just as Eleanor Caldwell's had been. The fund employed a small elite team of seasoned investigators, including retired law enforcement officers, forensic veterinarians, and animal behaviorists. But its core methodology was rooted in Alara's unique intuitive approach. She held regular intensive training workshops for these investigators, teaching them not just about evidence collection and legal procedures, but about listening to the animals. She taught them to recognize the subtle behavioral cues, the almost imperceptible signs of past trauma, the patterns of fear or aggression that could signal a history of abuse. She emphasized the critical importance of empathy, of spending time quietly observing, of trusting their gut feelings when an animal reacted unusually to a specific person or environment. It was her profound way of passing on her extraordinary talent, cultivating a new generation of animal defenders who could read the unspoken narratives of their voiceless clients, bringing to light the hidden sufferings of the innocent. Just last month, the Silent Voices Investigative Fund had achieved a major, highly publicized victory, the dismantling of a massive underground dog-fighting ring operating in a remote corner of rural Tennessee, a complex, deeply entrenched criminal operation that had evaded local law enforcement for years. It was Alara's insistence on investigating seemingly minor anomalies in local animal shelter intake data, coupled with her specialized teaching of how to identify the particular whispers of despair in abused fighting dogs, that led Noah's team directly to the perpetrators. Her unique blend of intuition, meticulous observation, and unwavering resolve had once again proven to be an unparalleled investigative tool, saving hundreds of suffering animals. Alara had also fulfilled a long-held, deeply personal dream. She had written a book, titled The Whispers of Whiskers, Listening to the Unspoken Language of Animals. It wasn't a dry scientific treatise, but a heartfelt memoir intertwining her personal journey of loss and discovery with practical, empathetic advice for understanding animal behavior, fostering deep connections, and advocating for animal rights. The book had become an unexpected, resounding bestseller, touching the hearts of thousands across the country, inspiring countless individuals to look at their pets, and indeed all animals, with new eyes and a deeper, more compassionate understanding. It beautifully articulated that animals, like humans, possess complex emotional lives, profound memories, and a capacity for both immense suffering and incredible resilience, and that their seemingly irrational reactions often hold profound, unspoken truths. One tranquil late afternoon, as the setting sun cast long, golden shadows across the now bustling, joyful cat lounge at Heartfelt Haven, Alara found herself sitting on a plush cat tree, observing the contented sprawl of felines around her. The lounge was a vibrant, sun-drenched space, filled with climbing structures, cozy beds, and an abundance of interactive toys. Kittens chased laser pointers. Adult cats napped in sunbeams, their soft purrs filling the air, and the room resonated with the gentle sighs of contentment. Midnight, no longer the terrified, reclusive shadow, but a beloved fixture, was curled peacefully on her lap, a warm, purring weight. His black fur, once scruffy and matted, was now sleek and glossy, meticulously cared for. His eyes, once haunted by fear and suspicion, were soft, trusting, and luminous, occasionally opening to blink slowly at her. A gesture of profound affection and serene peace. He had found his ultimate peace, his deep-seated trauma finally healed by years of unwavering love, unwavering safety, and unwavering belief in his inherent goodness. He was Alara's most loyal companion, the silent catalyst of her extraordinary journey, and a living testament to the power of healing and compassion. Elara gently stroked Midnight's soft fur, feeling the rhythmic vibration of his purr beneath her fingers, a constant melody of comfort and contentment. She looked out the expansive window, watching a flock of birds take flight against the vibrant, deepening twilight sky, a symbol of boundless freedom. The lingering fear from her past, the specter of Snowball and Rusty's unexplained disappearances, no longer haunted her. Instead, it had transmuted into the profound, unshakable fuel for her unwavering purpose. She was no longer powerless. She was a fierce protector, an eloquent voice for the voiceless. Her eyes, filled with a serene calm and a quiet, burning hope, looked towards the horizon, towards a future where the whispers of whiskers would never again be ignored, where every animal, no matter how small, how old, or how traumatized, would find its champion, its haven, and its unwavering light. If this story stirred your heart, if it reminds you that courage can alter destinies, and that light always finds a path even in the deepest darkness, please leave a comment. Share this story with those who need inspiration. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell to never miss our upcoming stories.